This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
The following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
Yes, it is me, and the whole team is not here.
No team today.
No team today. First, Alan Love, guest member, retired prosecuting attorney from Wisconsin, is cruising for 2 weeks, and the rest of them are hiding. Now, we don't know why, but you know, it does happen on occasion, every once in a while.
Yeah, nobody realized it was their turn.
Well, you know, and it's, again.
Left you here hanging.
What is this? Every week, did you ask me this? I think you did. You say, who's coming today?
Oh, yes, I said
and
that.
My standard answer
because I was thinking you were here by yourself, and I didn't see anyone coming, so I figured I'd ask who's coming.
Maybe I might have a clue ahead of time. You know, Victoria usually calls and says she's on her way because she's in between appointments. Dan has a perfect excuse, whatever it might be, called he's working.
Yeah, well, he's here more than anyone.
Dan is more than anyone, yep. And then Mike Paulus on mortgage. Hey, let me tell you what. Normally, his is a work program all the time, which is a good thing, you know. Now, which leads me to Joe Martek, who must not work much. Back in 2004, Joe Martek, financial advisor, Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, Greg Fasula, attorney, said, let's start doing radio shows with the simple purpose of each had a different area of expertise, and we could answer questions for people and help people. And then over a period of time, we added Ms. Victoria Lloyd Remax of Stewart and Mike Paulus, mortgage broker, and combined there's almost 200 years worth of experience, because especially I'm old, but other people are not so young either. So the concept of the thing, we have a talk show. I can do all the talking, which I have.
Well, today you better be able to do it.
Today I've got to be.
Yep, you're on.
But you're here. You
I'm always
you
here.
keep me awake. You know,
And I'm always talking, so.
That's a flat fact. 340-1590, 340-1590. Once in a while, Cliff's over there pretending we're doing TV, you know, and he'll nod off on occasion, but that's okay. You know, we're used to that. He doesn't. Oh, is he just blocking me out? 340-1590, 340-1590. So the concept of the group was very simple. Martek's here to make you money. Everybody else is there to save you money. Dan Warren, independent insurance agent. I can't tell you what a big word that is. Those of you that have lived in Florida a long time, especially since when Hurricane Andrew hit, and Hurricane Andrew put somewhere between 10 and 13 insurance companies out of business. And if you were a captive insurance agent, meaning working for one insurance company, oftentimes these one insurance carrier said, okay, fine, we're getting rid of half your business, or we're going to double or triple the premiums. And all of a sudden, you as an agent who had worked 10 years or 20 years to build your book, and all of a sudden half your income is taken away or more, it was kind of a disaster. But the independent does not work for one insurance company. He works for the client, and under his umbrella, he might have 5, 10, 20 companies. Dan happens to be, in my not too humble opinion, the premier independent insurance agent on the Treasure Coast, and he's got roughly 100 companies under his umbrella.
You know, though, Andrew was sort of a recipe for disaster as far as housing and insurance anyway, because had the homes been built to a better code instead of just the glut of putting up homes and selling homes, I mean, windows flew out of houses that they couldn't even find the screw holes.
Sure.
It became a bigger disaster because of the shoddy workmanship on all those homes in Homestead.
And you know what happens? Code changes. Back, you know, and it does.
It got much better after that.
Of course it does. Well, you know, that's what happens. Once you get a sharp stick in the eye, you learn something.
Even after Francis and Jean, we saw the houses that were built in the 80s in my neighborhood. Those were the houses that fell apart.
But look at Key West with all the old wood houses that were built back before there was anything.
Yep.
and they're there.
Well, even in Fort Pierce, there's that old flotilla building.
Oh,
I don't even know what they do out there, but it's the old wooden.
Yeah.
And it's still there.
Yeah.
Built much better than
old P.P. Cobb building's still there.
Yeah.
And then go down to St. Lucie Village. You know, I mean, it's the key thing is this. Back, I think sometimes when there was no code, but the people were
not. But the old folks knew something. They knew, they knew what to watch out for. They knew what was.
Well, yeah, and they weren't tourists.
It's just like
they weren't second home. These were people that lived here.
Yes.
So when they really, and how many times in life have you talked to somebody who, quote, built their home, and it's built not to anybody's standard but theirs, which was superior.
Yep.
Not that makes it sell any better, but it certainly was a better home.
Well, I have peace of mind in my home. I mean, we built our own house.
Yeah. We
were there every step of the way. Actually, things we couldn't do, we hired.
And it hasn't blown away yet.
Oh, gosh, no.
340-1590, 340-1590, which leads me to Greg Fasula, attorney. And, it's been a constant subject. I was talking to a client of mine this morning, and she had a couple of expletives deleted for a word attorney. And very often people are upset with attorneys because an attorney often can be arrogant and pretentious. And
it all depends on what you're hiring that attorney for.
Well, yeah.
Why do you need one? That's the thing.
Well, if you want a bulldog, they're there.
Sometimes you need one.
Yeah, yeah. But the key thing that I look for when it comes to my clients, we're going to talk about wills and trusts. And I'm not saying this is a simple subject, but the bottom line is there's value. Just as an example, I have a buddy of mine whose father died and left a considerable amount of money, and he went to an attorney, and an attorney said, we're going to put this through probate. Now, he didn't know any different. It did not need to go through probate. Now, the probate period usually takes 6 months if everything goes well, and it could take a year, but say 6 months to a year. And attorneys make a lot of money on probate. That same process could have gone through what's called an administration, which would have taken 2 or 3 weeks. The difference in cost was thousands of dollars. I went with him to interview the attorney. That attorney hates me.
Okay.
That attorney will never get nice things said by me. Bottom line was he did what was legal, not necessarily what, in my opinion.
Yeah, but he saw your friend coming.
Well, that's my point. So my buddy got gouged. And then I went to Greg afterwards, and but this other attorney already started the process. And Greg said to undo the process and start the process over again would take twice as long, and it's probably not worth it. So bite the bullet and try not to hire him to do more stuff.
Yeah, sometimes spite's worth it, though.
Yeah, well, the key thing is,
stop him from doing that.
It's these learning experiences, and like the truth is, I wished I'd have had been there for this buddy of mine.
Before it started, yeah.
But like everybody, you go to see somebody and you trust them and they tell you certain things, and then you go to see somebody else.
So what happened, though, is it didn't pass the smell test, but he asked for help too late.
Yep. So, but it's called life. So with Greg, one of the things that happens with Greg, Greg's a good listener. He's not pretentious. He's not arrogant. And more important to me, the most important part of Greg, if you come in and say, hey, Greg, I need to have a trust, and Greg will say, well, why do you think you need a trust? And you'll tell him, and he'll explain that maybe you don't need to spend the money on a trust because you don't have what is called probatable assets.
Or there might be a different way to pass that asset to your heirs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, how many times have we talked about a bank account? If you add transfer on death to your bank account, it doesn't have to go through the court system. If you have annuity contracts, there's beneficiaries, they don't go through the court system. If you have a retirement account, IRA, any type of retirement account, there's named beneficiaries, they do not go through the court system. If your homestead, your home, your primary home, is not subject to probate. So where do we end up with what's subject to probate? Even brokerage accounts can have transfer on death, and named beneficiaries don't have to go through probate.
With something like, let's just say you have investment property.
There you go. That almost always is subject to probate.
Okay.
So that's where the trust starts to make sense. So I've had clients that say they think they need a trust, and they go to seminars and people are selling trusts, but it just doesn't make any sense. I got a client right now they had two trusts, his trust and her trust. And over the years...
Sounds like my stuff and your stuff.
Well, point is they did it for tax purposes.
Okay.
Back, there used to be a rule you can only pass $675,000 to your heirs with no tax. If you had, let's say, a couple mil, then they would be paying 50% of the amount over that 675 in estate taxes.
Sure.
So very often you'd take and divide it into two trusts so that each could pass 675 each. Well, that rule now is up over 10 million. So not many people are sitting around with $10 million, so that money can pass without going through estate tax. So this AB trust, as they call it, his and hers, are pretty much things of the past unless you have an extremely high net worth.
But they were probably set up when the tax was different.
They were.
Yeah.
So then we're starting to go through what they've got, and they've got all these documents, and I said, guys, you don't need anything anymore. I mean, they're sitting in an assisted living. They don't own a real piece of real estate anymore. I mean, they really don't need anything. It was just called, those things were there when they were much younger. If they had died, then they made sense. But now all the rules have changed, and now they're 90 years old. They don't need that stuff. Well, not everybody is going to come up and show people that they don't need to spend money with an attorney or a financial person.
Should that be updated?
First of all, it doesn't need it at all.
Okay.
I mean, there is no assets to pass.
Okay.
Everything they've got is not subject to probate. It's already got name stuff on it. So she's got some jewelry, and here's her granddaughter. Hey, granddaughter, I'm dead. Take the jewelry. And everybody understands that. That's it. Now, you can write that down in a will.
Or just give it before you go.
There you go. And most of it has
You know
been.
what you want.
Yeah.
And who should have it.
A lot of these things are common sense.
They're going to fight about it anyway. But
well, yes and no. But the key thing is that if people are advised properly, they don't need to spend a lot of money needlessly. So Greg is one of those that automatically will tell you yes, no. He will not say, okay, let me find out about it. He'll say, hey, I don't do that, but I know somebody that does, that I trust, that has integrity. Go see that person. So with Greg, no matter what the situation is that comes up, I call him first and say, hey, Greg, who should I see? And that's the kind of faith I have in him.
And we've been having lots and lots and lots of people relocate to Florida.
Oh, big time.
Dan would usually bring it up. Should you have your I call it the business of life. Should you have all of that checked out by an attorney here in Florida if you're going to be moving here permanently?
See, you know what I like about her? You set me up because you got this show memorized.
Yes, I do.
Well,
I got to keep you talking.
Well, literally, if you look at any other state, every state has its own rules. Let's say you have a will and it's from Michigan or Ohio, I don't care where, and you live in Florida now. Well, that will might be okay, but it may not. It may need to be tweaked a little bit to make sure that it complies with Florida law. So it pays to at least check it out. Now, a guy like Greg, what he's going to do, you're going to make an appointment with somebody like Greg, go see him. He isn't going to charge you anything. But he'll tell you what he is going to charge you to do something if something needs to be done.
And I have to wonder, though, if all your family, let's say they're all still back in Michigan and you're the only one here, should you just leave it that way?
Well, it really depends where you die, where you're domiciled. If this is your homestead, this is your main residence, you're subject to Florida law. You know, if you're just vacationing, that's a different story.
Yeah. Would your family have to come here, though, then to clear your estate?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
That's why they have attorneys. They'll do it for you.
Yeah.
The whole concept is you have a will and you normally have a successor. It's not called a trustee. It's the what's the word for in a will? I'm having a senior moment.
Executor.
Executor. So the executor is named, and then normally what you do is name 2 or 3 people in case one dies before you, or in case they're not competent to do it.
Or in case that person wants to take everything.
Well, not because of that, because it says here's what they have to do upon your demise, and then there's beneficiaries that are named, and here's what's supposed to happen to all the stuff, and that person's in charge of doing it. Now, it's the same exact thing in a trust, only they're called a successor trustee rather than an executor. And they have a responsibility to do exactly what it says in writing. Now, every once in a while, somebody doesn't agree with the executor or the trustee. Well, guess what? Go sue them. And that does happen. So I'm one of those that right away when it comes to my clients, I said, hey, there's nothing wrong with your kids or your family knowing what's in this document ahead of time. A lot of people really hate to tell people ahead of time, and I've never understood this secrecy.
Yeah.
But I see it happen all the time, and it's kind of sad because it's all going to come out anyway. And if the person tries to steal, guess what you do? You hire an attorney and go after them. And, now attorneys are happy again. So in order to get this thing done properly, you open up the books and say, hey, here's what it is. I had one of my favorite ones, a client of mine, widow lady. She was a maniac. Means she's from Maine.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You didn't know that one, huh? Now, she's a very private person. Her and her husband never had children. Husband died. Her brother died and left her a ton of money. Now, she's private, meaning she doesn't know her neighbors, doesn't have friends, doesn't have relatives, doesn't have anybody. But she's got a will and then converted it to a trust. And in the trust, she was giving money away to a bunch of shirt-tail relatives that she didn't know and didn't know her, but were waiting for the money. Well, she decided she was going to die. Now, I say that because she was on dialysis, and she was really tired of dialysis, and she was in her 80s, so she said, I'm quitting dialysis. And I didn't say anything. She goes, Joe, I'm not looking for permission. I'm just letting you know. I said, okay. She goes, now I want to change the trust. This is 2 weeks before she died.
Yeah.
I said, oh, boy,
timing is everything,
This is really wonderful. Well, what had happened was a year or two before all this happened, she's by herself, and I said, hey, you need to talk to somebody every day. And she said, why? And I said, well, let's say you fell down and nobody would know about it for a week or two. You could die slowly. And then if you died, the house would start to rot and stink, and then all of a sudden your inheritance really gets a mess because the house would be
Or how about you're laying there and you're not dead and you're like...
dying slowly.
Yeah, starving.
So anyway, she said, well, Joe, I don't have anybody to talk to. And I said, she didn't go to church. She doesn't do anything. And I said, well, you got to find somebody. She goes, well, I don't know what to do. And I said, okay, fine. I'll call you every day. She goes, okay, good. And I said, it's 6 a.m. She goes, I'll find somebody. So she did. She found neighbors. All of a sudden, she had a complete life. She had people in her life.
And she realized that those family members who were in her will weren't really a part of it.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So then 2 weeks before she died, she goes, Joe, I'm going to change the trust. And I said, boy, this is wonderful. Talk about a contesting. Competence is the name of the game. So I said, fine, here's what's going to happen. Now, her mind was fine. We're going to hire a videographer, going to come into the hospital and videotape this, and we're going to have an attorney come and ask you questions, and you're going to not be prompted by anybody. You're going to have to come up with your own decisions, and we're going to do it twice in order to modify this thing. So she died. And then I get this phone call from Maine. I'm a nephew. I'm probably in that trust. And I said, yes, you are. And I said, tell you what I'm doing. I'm going to send you a copy of it along with 2 videotapes done by your aunt. Oh, okay, good. Well, I'm sure he wasn't happy, but there was nothing.
You never heard from him again?
Well, he got his money, but he didn't get as much as he thought he would. But that's okay. It was her decision.
Sure.
So whatever she wanted to do.
Yeah.
So the key thing that you do, and a guy like me, my job is to help make sure people make good decisions. I can't force them to make decisions, but I can push them pretty hard. One of my more favorite ones, and if Dan was here and Greg was here, this is one that I love. Client of mine, husband died. And she says, hey, Joe, so-and-so is gone, and the house is not in the trust. And I said, why? She goes, well, the attorney said when one of you dies, come on in and I'll put it in the trust. So Dan and I were looking at each other, and Greg's sitting here, and we said, Greg, why would an attorney do that? And Greg was trying to find a reason without being mean. And Dan and I said, it's because of money. Well, I said, look, I'll take you down to the courthouse, and we'll put you on the trust and get it done. It's just a paper thing. I can sign it. You buy me lunch, and it can't be at McDonald's, but that'll save you, quite a bit of money. So we go down there, and in the courthouse clerk says, fine, we can put you into the trust, but only on half the house. And he said, what? Well, it doesn't say husband and wife on your deed. It has your husband's name and your name. That could have been brother and sister.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So literally, his half of the house was subject to probate, and it had to go through probate. Now, luckily, they did not have stepchildren, because the 3 children were entitled to their share of half of the house. Mm-hmm. Now, if they'd have been stepkids, they might have forced mom to sell the house and settle up. Luckily, the kids signed off, went through the court system, but it was just a mistake that had been made by an attorney.
Yeah.
No excuse.
And it was made even prior to that. Whoever recorded that title, whoever did that paperwork.
No, but here's the number one thing. Any attorney, in my opinion, when they're doing a trust, should say, okay, fine, we're going to put the house in the trust. Give me the deed.
Yeah, so they would have found that problem then.
Immediately.
Okay.
And the fact that he said no, he was assuming probably that it was in both their names, and as husband and wife. But the fact that it was not meant it was subject to probate.
Which that assuming could have been a problem for that woman, because if he had children from another marriage,
big time,
she would have had to have been able to pay.
I had a case exactly what you're saying down in Palm Beach County, where husband and wife married forever, good, everything was good. He bought properties, and she was the house stay-at-home wife, and his side of the room and her side of the room, when they didn't cross, you know what I'm saying, woman's work and men's work.
Okay.
So he dies. They owned like 10 or 12 pieces of property, all in his name, none in her name.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, they were old-fashioned. He was the man.
He was the man.
Yeah.
And it wasn't done to be vicious or anything, but now there were stepkids. She spent the next 3 years having to get rid of these properties, settle the estate, pay off the kids. She was due, in Florida, I call it dower rights. The spouse has a percentage right, and I think it's 30% of his estate, and then the kids get the rest. So she had 30% of those 10 pieces of property.
Right.
So it was to her advantage to sell them and get rid of them. And the kids, they could care less. Hey, you do it.
And I'm sure that wasn't his intention.
Oh, of course not. He was a good guy. They had a good marriage. It was nothing. It was just ignorance, and nobody had educated this guy. And I thought, all this time, nobody educated him. And all they had to do one time was show him why, and I'm sure he would have corrected it. Anyway, just mistakes in life. 340-1590, 340-1590. We haven't heard from Mike yet today. Haven't heard from Bulldog now for a couple weeks.
Well, you need to touch upon politics to get Mike to call.
Politics, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what.
It's been kind of quiet, though, in a way.
You know, what's happening is this political thing, it gets more ludicrous every day. It gets so...
You can't listen anymore, yeah.
It just, oh, yeah.
Did you see Kamala Harris in her Technicolor dream coat?
Oh, yeah. I like OCS.
Oh, my God.
I mean... She's this. I think her and Bernie should run together on the ticket.
Miss Cortez.
Yeah. OSC, is it?
Yes.
I forget.
She's got too many names. I can't remember all of them. I just call her Pistachio.
But I think they're now calling her OCS or OSC.
Yeah.
Just make it
AOC.
Is it AOC?
Yeah, AOC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love this.
You know what? I think she's a diversion, actually. I think she's a shiny new object. Look over here while we do other things over here. I haven't quite figured out what's going on yet, but I'm working on it.
Well, it's a trip. It's a very interesting thing. So, hey, and Bernie's going to be president for sure as far as he's concerned.
Did you see him during his interview?
Yeah.
He was all cleaned up.
Well, he combed his hair, everything.
I think he even got a haircut.
Scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, when... Us old guys, it's not that hard to clean us up.
He didn't look like that on the night of the addressing the...
No.
I forget what it's called. Yeah.
340-1590, 340-1590.
State of the Union. That's what it was. During the State of the Union.
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about Joe Martek and some business because I've got time to do that, and I don't have anybody else doing it. One thing real quick. Uh-oh.
See?
Oh, don't do it. Uh-oh. The station owner's husband. Hey, guess what? You see, you ask for a phone call, and some people are good at doing that, and I appreciate that.
And we have Bulldog on hold. Hang on, Bulldog.
Hey, Mike, it's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Hey, I'm just enjoying enjoying watching the crazy world go by these days.
Yeah, I'm telling you what.
I'm wondering how long it's going to be before that sweet little lady that married the 3 ISIS fighters gets back into the States, goes to Hollywood, and gets her own TV show on to tell us what life with the butchers and the barbarians was like. I think it could happen.
You know what?
Yeah. I'm sure they could make a mini-series even.
I'm telling you what, this girl could be worth millions of dollars. Just you know, and you're right.
And I'm sure we can let her in and help her with housing.
Oh, of course.
She's got that baby on the way, right?
Of course.
Is this the one with the baby on the way?
Either she's got 2 or 3 kids.
Well, one had 3 kids and then no kids because they died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's correct. But what's enjoyable to me is pulling up to stoplights these days and seeing 3 and 4 unbelievable Harleys like I've never seen sitting beside me till the light changed. I'm seeing Harleys that are just so gorgeous these days.
Well,
they're everywhere.
And that is never a bad thing.
Never a bad thing. Well, you're going to have Bulldog. You're going to have Bulldog in a moment who's a Harley buff and a half. You know that.
Very well. Well, good talking with you.
Mike, thanks for listening. Thanks for calling. Appreciate it, my man.
Bye-bye.
And guess what? Is Bulldog on the radio? He's on. Bulldog, you're on now.
Hey, how you doing, Joe?
All right, you feeling okay?
I wanted to, well, not really. But in text to that, I want to praise one other thing that Greg Fasula does that a lot of people should think about is power of attorney.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
I'm going to be going through some medical procedures, and without that POA, Mary Beth would be helpless.
Well, there's 2 things that Mary Beth has to do. Medical procedures has a health care surrogate where she can make decisions for you in case you're out to lunch. And then the power of attorney allows her to pay bills and do things that are necessary to do with your money.
Exactly. And that's probably the situation I'm going to end up in, unfortunately. But it's something that everyone should think about because without that, hands are tied. You can't even, say yes or no to any kind of procedures or anything. So it's really kind of important to do that.
Well, you hit the 2 things. Stay with me on that for 1 more minute. The healthcare surrogate simply says you name a person that has the authority to cut you, not cut you, save your life, put you on life support, do whatever. It's just the same thing as if you're alive and awake and you can make your own decisions. That's the healthcare surrogate. The power of attorney says, okay, now I'm out to lunch. I'm in a coma for 6 years or 6 days or 6 weeks. Who's going to pay the light bill and who has access to my bank accounts? Who has access to take care of making the house payments or the car payments or the insurance payments? Both of those documents, and you just hit it, are very, very important.
Well, it's not even. It's important for the person who is out, but it's also important for the people that they love.
Of course, it's a 2-edged sword. I mean, I look at Bulldog and Mary Beth, and it's 100% no doubt about it. She's only going to do the right thing for him, and he's only going to do the right thing for her. But without these documents, it could be a problem, and it would be a problem. But hey, Bulldog, listen. Thanks for bringing that subject up, my man.
Yeah. I'll talk to you later, Joe, about it if you want to. I don't want to, share anything on air.
All right, my man.
All right? I'll talk to you.
Bye.
Bye.
340-1590, 340-1590. Well, so I got 2 people to call. Yep. That's not bad. If I knew a couple more people by name, I could call them.
You'd ask them to call in?
I could call in, right? Anyway, I was just covering a couple subjects when it comes to wills and trusts.
Now I have a question for you since Bulldog brings up the topic with the power of attorney and the healthcare surrogate. Mm-hmm. Say you're a couple that's not married.
Well, that's Bulldog.
Okay. And you need to go into the hospital, and that person needs to make this. I mean, they could give you a hard time if
what do you mean could? Yeah.
Okay.
Doctor, first of all, they don't like doing anything to you if you're out to lunch without somebody having authority because of lawsuits.
I don't know about that.
Well, they don't like it. I didn't say they won't.
No, I've had, because I have an adult son that's been in the hospital.
Right.
I've had them make decisions without us being there.
Well, did it always upset you, or?
Well, there was one, that was upsetting to not only me but to his physician.
point is,
someone at the hospital went ahead
but understand what happened. Now, wear the hospital hat. Now, let's just say their hearts are good and they're trying to do the right thing.
They will say, right, they're treating you.
But if they make a decision that is not good, even with good intentions, without authority, lawsuits happen. And this is a big, this is Sue America. And very often these are 100% proper and legal and moral.
This was a situation where he was admitted to a hospital by a surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do surgeons do?
They cut.
Surgery.
Yeah.
So, that was the path that was, and the other doctors were thinking, no, it's that we don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
The treatment needs to be this. So,
all I
conflict of
know
interest
is
there.
This, normally, most hospitals are very, very risk adverse today because of the amount of these lawsuits, and this power of attorney and this healthcare surrogate are very, very important documents. Very important documents. Anyway, I'm going to switch gears.
Yep.
I talk about this on the radio occasionally, and when I see these ads on TV and for investments, but they're not really for investments. They talk about people with retirement money and we're going to make all kinds of money. But at the fine print that is real hard to read, they're coming up there and they're saying this is not securities. We're not selling any stocks or bonds or mutual funds or anything like that. And if you can speed read, you might find out that they're selling insurance policies. Now, most of these things are now called fixed index annuities. And the fixed index annuity is a relatively new phenomenon that came out, maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago. And it was kind of a play on words because it let people think they were in the market index, but they really weren't. They were in a fixed instrument. Now, fixed means it pays an interest rate. It doesn't put you in the market. You're never in the market if you're in a fixed annuity, fixed index annuity. You're getting paid an interest rate. But the index annuity oftentimes says you're going to get paid interest based on the performance of the index. Based on the performance of the index. You're not in the index. Then how they calculate how you get paid is a bit difficult to understand. We call it point to point. Point to point means January 1st till December 31st. Index goes up 10%, you should go up 10%, right? However, we may have a cap. The cap might say you can only go up 2 or 3% max. That's the most you can make. But
why would you want in on that if that's the case?
Well, because you don't know.
2?
Because you don't know.
Okay.
I think if the average person found out what it was. Now, if you were saying, okay, fine, I'm getting 1% in the bank, you mean I can make as much as 3%? I'm fine with that as long as it's divulged. But very often these things are...
Yeah, but if you're showing me 6, but it's really capped at 2, then that's not what's going on.
That's not what's going on. Let's say it's capped at 3. Pick a number. Some of these contracts allow the insurance company to change the cap every year. So, boy, isn't that wonderful? So right now it's at 2. I can go up or down. Some of them say we've got a minimum of 1, that they will always have to pay at least 1. Some say if the index never goes up a dime, they aren't going to give you any money, but you can't go down. Well, that's your protection. So that's where the fixed guarantees your money. So the key thing when I talk about everybody, when they hear the word index, you've got to be extremely careful. And the main things to look at is, and I watched this word on TV, interest credited. Interest credited. That didn't say paid. It said credited. One of the main things that happens with this...
Kind of like you can see it, but you just can't touch it?
Well, yeah.
You can't have it?
You can't have it.
No.
How do I collect this money? You can't take it out. The only way you can take it out is if you retire or when you retire. You have to set up a pension, and now we're going to pay you a pension based on the total value of that contract. And that's got some fine words in it, too. You got to be very careful with these words. So interest crediting is careful words. Another word, I had a fellow that I've known for a long, long time, and he's got his money in the bank, and of course he's not happy with the 0.5 or 1% he was making. And he says, well, they're going to pay me 7% interest, Joe. And I said, no, they're not. And he says, yeah, they are. I got it right here. And I said, what's it say word for word? He said, 7% factor. And I says, no, what does factor mean?
I don't know.
He said, I guess that's not interest, is it? Yeah. And I said, no, it's not. It's a factor based on your age, what you're going to get paid. It's got nothing to do with what you're earning. So words are very careful. And a lot of times we call them errors of omission. People are not told the whole story, or they're led to believe one direction, and that's not really the true direction. So I caution people constantly about watching and paying attention whenever they hear the word index annuities, when you see these big free lunch things, and they're going to do all kinds of stuff for you, and just be very, very, very careful. I was at
Do you ever go to those to see what they're all about, or you stay clear?
I know a couple guys that went to jail, but they did those things, minor little things. Lost their licenses for sure, and they got busted big times. But if they find out they know who I am in there, they're not happy.
Okay.
The key thing that you've got to be concerned about are the fine details. Now, if you deal with a securities representative, that means a stockbroker, a licensed financial advisor. Now, you can use these words. Anybody can say this is what they are. How do you know the difference? Well, normally on the bottom of a business card or envelope or anything, when it's a securities person, it'll say securities offered through the name of the broker-dealer, Merrill Lynch, Dean Witter, Smith Barney, Mine Centaurus Financial. Then it'll say FINRA, SIPC. FINRA is the self-regulatory agency. SIPC is the insurance company that's there to protect people for fraud. So, and what happens, guys like me, we are not allowed to run these things on TV because they have to go through compliance first, and they would never let us say the things that are being said. So you're never going to see the big houses, the big firms, that we never say things specifically on TV, any ad. They always talk generalities. We're good people, we got clouds, we live well, and we're going to hold your hand and stuff like that. But they don't ever talk to you about specifics like these other things do. So just be very, very, very careful. In fact, some of these things now, even the insurance companies that are involved with these people running these commercials, even though they don't have to show them to them ahead of time, when they find out what they're saying, make them add some disclaimers in there that are hard to read, hard to find. If you listen to...
Or hard to understand.
Oh, boy. If you listen to this show and the other one that we do at 4 o'clock today on WCNO 89.9 FM Christian Radio, we have a disclaimer at the beginning and at the end that I have to have, that the government says you got to say that stuff. So the whole concept is regulatory agencies. Now, I'm not big on government regulating stuff, but some things need to be. I mean, let's face it. Let's talk car insurance, house insurance, life insurance. None of us can understand these contracts. We've got to have some regulation in there.
Some of that stuff's designed that way, too, so that you need an attorney to figure it out.
By attorneys for attorneys. And, and attorneys get paid by the word. So if you ask an attorney an opinion, you ain't going to get it. You're going to get a dissertation because that's how they get paid. And they're going to cover their butt extremely by putting lots of words in there and caveats, all kinds of stuff. Well, that's just the nature of life. Nothing we can do about that. So all I'm trying to do is caution people on that. But I'm going to talk about two other types of investments today. One it's currently, let me go into two. The first one is 100% liquid. I can buy it today. I can sell it tomorrow. There's no penalties, no nothing. You got to pay me a commission. You're only going to pay one time. You're going to pay me anywhere from 2.5% or less, depending on how much money you put in. These are called REITs, R-E-I-T, Real Estate Investment Trust. What is that? Now, the things that I deal with are liquid, meaning they trade on either the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ, a public stock exchange, so that they're liquid, meaning I can buy it today, I can sell it tomorrow. I don't like anything that you may not be able to get in and out of because of whatever the reason might be. So if they trade on these stock exchanges, under almost all circumstances, they're liquid and we can get in and out as fast as we want. You've heard of day traders and people that are traders. That's what they do. They trade stuff all the time on these stock exchanges. Now, the REITs, by definition, have to pay out 90% of their profits every 3 months. So the mortgage REITs, the ones that I'm dealing with, have been paying now for the last few years between 10 and 12% annually. And they pay every 3 months, 2.5%, 3%. That means you'd get a check every 3 months, 2.5% or 3%. That's just the way it is. Is it ordinary income? Sometimes. Is it dividend income? Sometimes. But bottom line is that money is spit out no matter what, whether you take it or not, unless it's in an IRA, it's going to be subject to tax. If it's in an IRA, it's not subject to tax until you took the money out. In the meantime, what happens with these things that makes them a little bit more fun for me, you can own these things for as little as 2 weeks and collect 3 months worth of interest. Mm-hmm. Now, this makes no sense whatsoever.
No, it doesn't seem to.
But it's just like being Catholic. Don't ask questions. You just are one. You don't ask it. This is just the way it is. These are rules. Sometimes you have to own it for a whole month, but usually it's 2 weeks to a month. They call it the X date or record date, and you have to own it on that date to get paid that interest in 2 or 3 weeks or a month later. Well, if you look at the price of the shares, the closer you get to that X date or that record date, the higher the share price usually goes because everybody wants it right about then. And then right after it's too late to own it, the share prices start to come down.
Right. Well, they know what they're doing too.
Well, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Well, but what happens is it isn't the companies controlling the share price, it's the buyers and the sellers.
Okay.
And so it's these things, all these shares are issued. They're owned by somebody, but people are buying and selling them all the time. Why? Well, one, some people just want the income. Other people, like Joe Martek, say, hey, wait a minute. Every once in a while, there's a spread in 1 quarter that runs 10 to 15% from high to low. How do you do that? Well, you can't do it perfectly ever, because if you think you're doing it perfectly ever, you're the only person alive that would have all the money.
All the money, yeah.
So you do your best by looking at charts and arrows and graphs and following these things. But last December, I had one client that we actually made a 30% hit in 1 quarter. Now, that's a miracle all by itself, but he was a happy camper. I'm a happy camper.
Yeah, try to do that again, right?
Well, right now the same guy's up a little less than 10, but the quarter's not over yet. Okay, understand, 2.5 or 3, that's the given. But if all of a sudden you can make 10 or 15, there's an opportunity to buy it and sell it. Now, is there negatives and positives? Sure. One, you got to pay me. Can you imagine that? Working for, I mean, I'm earning my keep is what I'm saying.
That's
so
what
you're
you
gonna,
do.
I'm charging a fixed commission, not when you sell, only when you buy. So if you buy, and let's say at the end of the year, you would have made 10 one time by paying me my 2.5%, 1% one time, but you might have made 20 if we bought and sold a couple times, and you might have netted 17 or 18 or 15 rather than the 10. So the concept is, how can I make you make money and make me money? That's the name of the game. So anybody that's interested in getting some information on those, I'd be glad to share it with you. 340-1590, 340-1590. That's just one of my more favorite ones. Victoria, has the show started yet? Don't let you love our girl. Does she ever pay attention to what time? Victoria, you don't wear a watch, right?
I know that it started. He's being a little.
Is this, this was the owner's husband that came in here with that. You know how we can't trust him.
He said Victoria who, and I said that's my last name. Who? Of course that's my last name. Who wouldn't know that?
Who wouldn't know that, right? Everybody.
Yeah.
Who's on first base?
That's right. That's right. Well, I've been out working with clients. I had this beautiful 4-bedroom rental with a pool. And the people just rented it. They're coming here from California with a transfer. So
good for them. Good for them.
Yeah. So it was really, they're very, very nice people. So they work with the colleges, which is very nice. So
if they're coming from California, they're saying, what a bargain we are, right?
Well, they are. I mean, we're talking over $2,000 just for a rental alone. It just blows my mind when we can buy houses for so much less.
Yeah, you think in California, I mean, if a house $1 million doesn't rock anybody's socks, you know.
Well, the thing of it is, in California, they were living in 1,000 square foot.
Yeah.
This is almost 2,000 square feet home.
Yeah.
So to them, it's like twice as big. So and it has a summer kitchen and it's 3 lots together, so it's on a huge piece of property.
You don't get that out there, you know.
They feel they died and went to heaven a little bit.
Yeah.
And they have. And he says, well, we're not used to. He didn't know what hurricane shutters were. I said, no, you'd rather have the earth open up and take you down, right? Yeah, they don't.
They understand earthquakes. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's what they get. So I just wanted to call in and let you know.
Yeah, in fact, I was
there
talking.
must have been a police officer that passed away. ACOP Funeral Home has all these police officers, so it must have been a police officer passed away.
Yeah, well, probably. As it goes. Hey, all I know is that California, I talked to some of my broker-dealers out there, and they're in Anaheim, which is greater L.A., and it's called, all right, you guys flooded this week? Are you blown away by a flood? Are you burnt? You know?
Yeah.
They're getting more than their share this year.
No, I think they're going to love it. His wife's originally from Georgia, so he's more familiar with it, but he's more familiar with California. So it's pretty interesting when you see people that and I always thought California was warm. When I went out there, it was so cold, you know, because of the beautiful waterways. I went, what's wrong with me?
No, it's not.
It's
not warm. Yeah, even San Diego, that water in the ocean's cold.
It is. Yep. It's really cold. That's why those seals love it so much.
Yep. All right, girl. Everything else is good, though, huh?
I'm on it like a hip pocket boy. I'm out there.
All right, girl. Thanks.
I'll see you.
Bye.
Good talking to you. I'll talk to you later today, maybe.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
340-1590, 340-1590. Now we just need Mike Paulus to call in, and that would it. Because Mike's the mortgage guy, and her, Victoria and Mike work hand in glove. Mike,
well, you got to have money in order to buy a house, so.
Well, you don't need much. If you get to.
Well, it depends on what you qualify for.
Well, there you go.
And he would be able to.
You'd have to be able to pay the payments.
There you go.
Comes the magic.
But he would be able to tell you what you qualify for.
There you go. So that's the whole concept of financing today. The rules used to be, and they're back to that, is you have to prove you can make the payment. Now, how do you do that?
I don't know how they got away from that rule.
Well,
seriously.
They do. But, you know, I remember back in 1976, I was talking to a banker, and they had built this whole condominium right on the ocean and not sold one unit. It was like 100 unsold. And I said, boy, it'll never happen again. You banks make that mistake. And he said, don't count on it. He said, all the guys that made these mistakes have either been promoted or fired. And what happens in the industry, it's a roller coaster.
Well, it's like anything. The new people come along, too, with what they think are new ideas. Yeah. But those are really ideas that have been done before and maybe not successfully.
You know, man is a greedy person. So they're going to find a way to get around whatever the rules are.
Sure.
And then cause more trouble. And then taxpayers have to bail it out. Nothing new in life. This goes on and on and on. Like to think it's not going to happen again is ridiculous. There's always a way around every rule. 340-1590, 340-1590. Hey, let me put a little thing out that I wanted to talk about. I've got a sheriff's deputy out in Montana who is trying to raise some money to get dogs on the sheriff's department, police dogs. Now, this is a small police department. It's Flathead County, and I mean, if I look at all of Montana, the population is less than Palm Beach County.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's a really good guy. They're trying to raise $25,000 for dogs, and police dogs are just a magnificent tool. Every police department has got them, and you know they make a big deal out of it, and they should, because the dogs just really earn their keep. If anybody is interested in donating any money, I'm going to give you my cell phone right now, because I can give you the names and addresses, but boy, you got to write a lot of stuff down. I don't care how much it is. You'd be doing me a favor and doing them a favor to help this small county, Flathead County. And my cell is 772-285-3083. Again, it's Joe Martek, 772-285-3083. And this is to donate, which is a tax-free deduction, to the Flathead Community Foundation, which is part of the Sheriff's Department. And this is not what you call one of these organized charities that sucks all the money off the top. This is money going to go to get these dogs and train these dogs, and it's a very, very useful thing. 772-285-3083. 772-285-3083. And
they need to be reaching out to other departments that have dogs. And
what happens is, and I don't understand the mechanics, but hey, the sheriffs, I'm sure they all work together and know each other. They know where they're buying the dogs. They know what it costs.
They're from Germany. I mean, they're very special dogs.
Well, they are. But the key thing is they're not cheap.
No.
And the training is not cheap.
Right. Well, that's what makes them expensive dogs.
Yeah. And the dogs more than earn their keep. That's the easy part. How much time we have, Mother?
You got about 2 minutes.
Okay. Last and favorite investment is now called a variable annuity, which puts insurance together with investment. Insurance. What's that mean? It means your money's protected in case you die, and your money's protected in case you live. But you're in the market. So like 2 years ago, we had clients of mine in these insurance products that made up to 20% in 1 year. That was their money. They could take it and spend it. It's their money. You're really in the market. But when the market collapses, they're afraid they're going to lose their money. Well, very often these contracts put in death benefits to protect you in case you die in a wrong... Don't protect you, your family, they do, in case you die in a wrong day. And they also have what they say guaranteed income for life in case you have a problem where you don't run out of money. These are really, really neat contracts. I love what they do for people. My compliance people say I'm supposed to tell you you're supposed to know the claims paying ability of these insurance companies, and I only deal with the A-plus rated insurance companies, household names. But the key thing that these things do, there's no smoke and mirrors. You see what you get, and if it makes all kinds of money, it's your money, take it and run. Now, there's negatives with everything, meaning an insurance company gets paid. Well, no kidding. So the object is, these are things to learn if you're having situations that you'd like to be involved in making some money, but want to make sure it's protected. These are instruments to look at that I consider extremely normal. Forget the 340-1590. 340-1590.
Well, you got about a minute left in the show, so
I got a whole minute.
If you call, you're going to be calling, talking to them off the air.
I'm going to be calling.
If they call in, you're going to be talking to them off the air.
if they call in now?
Right now, yeah.
I got a whole minute.
You got about 30 seconds.
Oh, okay.
It just kind of ticks away.
Hey, listen, so much for today. Bulldog, I'll be talking to you soon. Mike, thanks for calling in, Victoria. And until next week, thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.